Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hilary Zalman here with the Boca's Briefcase. Thanks to the Boca Raton Tribune. I expect everybody to like and follow and subscribe the Boca Raton Tribune. It's on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It has its own website. Follow them, like them. They bring us special guests each week, which lets us know what's going on in our community. Obviously, today I think is day 2 of the Senate hearings or the confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett. If you, regardless of how you feel politically, it shouldn't be political. It's actually very interesting if you turn on the news a little bit. I mean, and hear just they're going into constitutional theory about everything from voting, your rights to voting suppression, healthcare, right to bear arms, Second Amendment, search and seizure. They're really getting into constitutional discussions that are just interesting if you want to check it out. I'm very excited for next week. We have the New York Times bestseller author, Ellen Hildebrand. She's a fictional writer, and if you are a soon-to-be future writer and you want to know how to get on the New York Times bestsellers list, if you're an avid reader and want to read some of her series, next week is definitely not a week to miss, and she will answer your questions. So feel free to come with questions. But today we're going to get a little more local and talk about the law and how the federal laws are affecting South Florida, focusing on the CDC and everything else in regards to real estate law, evictions, and foreclosures. So I have a great guest, someone who's opposite of me all the time in the courtroom, and that's why I invited him here today, Brian Kowal, my adversary. If I was Batman, then you're my Joker.
Right. Thank you for having me, Hilary.
Thank you. So very excited for you to be here. And I speak with Brian all the time. We're both appearing, and Brian is just attending a slew of hearings, and I want to share what we're dealing with so the people out there know, because there's a lot of misinformation and new information that's very fluid. So let's jump right in. And anyone watching, please send Brian your love, send him a like or anything like that, because he's taking out this half an hour of a very, very busy afternoon to try to help answer questions to realtors, tenants, landlords, anyone that owns a home. So let's begin. First of all, I'd like to start on my favorite topic, only because I've been doing this so long, which is landlord, tenant, and evictions. I know that last week, in fact, most of my hearings have been focused around the CDC. Let's see, it's called the Federal Register to Halt Evictions, and they actually title it "To Halt in Residential Evictions to Prevent Further Spread of COVID." And what this is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued an order that affects us here in South Florida, halting certain evictions. So I want to get to you, Brian, to see if this has affected any of your residential or residential evictions and like your take on it. And I'll share what happened with our cases this past week.
Absolutely. So, in the beginning of, I guess, the coronavirus, it was more we were dealing with the governor's order. And I think a lot of the judges and I think a lot of the attorneys like you and I there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of, like you said, misinformation as to what they were going to do, or were they going to grant it, or the sheriff's going to actually come out. And I think that's the big question. Are the sheriffs going to come out? Well, will the judges listen to the entire case, or will, even if they enter a final judgment of eviction, will the sheriff enforce the writ? And I think it became more when it was just for non-payment of rent. And if they could prove that they weren't paying, then, they weren't able to actually follow through with the eviction. What I know is that, again, I represent both sides. I represent a lot of tenants, and, tenants were being evicted for non-monetary violations of the lease. They were also also being evicted for termination of a month-to-month tenancy, or a termination of weekly tenancy. In the beginning of September,
let's see, I've got the date, September 4th. September 4th, this came out.
Right. So what happened was when the CDC came out, I believe that they were no longer enforcing the governor. Well, the governor said they were no longer enforcing his order because the CDC order was even more stringent on, landlords, and was more clear as to what people wanted. Now, I've seen, again, I represent both sides, but I've seen once you raise, the CDC, once you attach it to your response, judges are just kind of upping.
Right.
And it's very bizarre just to kind of see the pattern of what's going on. But even after sometimes you get all the way to a final judgment and a person's been defaulted, that means they didn't respond, and they file, any type of plea that's saying, no, I can't pay because of the CDC, the judge will hear the case again, even if they didn't respond initially. So I'm seeing the CDC order having an enormous effect.
Yeah, I was
on the
in.
regulator.
What's neat is that Brian and I, we get to, when we attend hearing now, it's via Zoom. So you get to watch everybody's hearing. It's like a bunch of boxes, and we get to watch everything that everyone's talking about. And I had one attorney go before me who had a tenant who hadn't paid rent since well before COVID took place. I mean, we're going back, it was like 10 months or whatnot. And was like, please, I need to move this forward. And the judge said, well, there's a CDC defense here. And with the CDC defense, I think you have to show a few things, but one of them, they have to show that they're actively looking for rental relief, which, each county, each city has its own, but you're supposed to show that, and you're supposed to put in your defense that you have a defense, to not pay rent due to COVID. You lost your job, your wages were lessened. There's a number of factors, and anyone can Google it if you want to just type in Federal Register to halt evictions. But if you do that and you file these affidavits, your case can go on. It doesn't stop, right, Brian? I mean, I don't know from your experience, like it keeps going, but they're not going to evict you. Like you could have an order to put money in the registry, but you can't really enforce it until, let's see, I think it expires.
I think December 31st, right?
December, let's see, it's in here somewhere. Yeah, it's in December 31st.
Well, and I think the bigger issue is, and what a lot of landlords, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I feel terrible for landlords. I do. I mean, there's really nothing in the federal orders anywhere, because remember, these are all investment properties for the most part. They're not living in them. So they're not getting the relief of forbearance because they're investment property.
Right.
So, and you have some of these tenants that are owed 9, 10, 11, I'm sorry, some of these landlords that are owed 10, 11, $12,000. And, the law says, well, you can always go after these, the tenants for the money, but chances are you're not going to be able to collect the money. But I will say for landlords, though, if they do want to try to, or collecting them, they need to get the information of where the tenant is moving to, where they leave. Otherwise, there's really no other way to collect them unless they're going to get money from the city.
No, that's a good point. The judges are saying, look, yeah, it's on hold, but you're going to have to pay it's still accruing. The rent's still accruing. It's not being waived. And one judge, which I'm not going to obviously name, but pointed me out to this provision, which I wasn't even aware of. The criminal penalties for violating this, like you have to take it seriously. If you're going to use this as defense, you can't lie. And both sides have to follow it. The person violating this may be subject to a fine of no more than $100,000. And it goes on and on and on, that the U.S. Department of Justice can initiate court proceedings, including criminal penalties. So this has to be taken very seriously if you're going to use this as defense.
Absolutely. Hilary, what I've seen a lot now is a lot of landlord attorneys are actually including another count in the complaint for past due rent, because you're not evicting them. You're getting a judgment, which I think is a great, listen, for any type of recourse for landlords, it's the best possible thing you can do if there's an active case, because you're not evicting them for non-payment of rent. You're just getting a money judgment against them. And then look, if they're not working, they say they're not working. Okay, show me that you're not working. You can still go ahead and garnish their wages. You can still go ahead and freeze their bank accounts because you have a money judgment for past due rent. It has nothing to do with removing them from the property.
No, it's a great point, because a lot of times with evictions in the past, maybe they're a couple of months rent behind. A landlord doesn't necessarily sue to recover rent. They just want to get their property back so that they can pay their mortgage or for the investment property. But now, like Brian's saying, you add that second count, you serve them with damages, because now the damages are actually huge. They could be 6 months, 7 months, 8 months of rent or more.
Right. And
Um,
exactly. And I think another thing that you can think about is that these people, the tenants, today leave, they have a judgment against them. If they ever want to go, buy a house, take out a loan, they're going to have to resolve this judgment with their landlord. So for the landlord, it's not a bad thing because at least maybe they'll one day call the landlord up and say, look, I need to get rid of this lien. Can you settle on this, this amount?
right. And
And
settling is the best because obviously the tenant's usually not going to pay the full balance due.
correct.
And the landlords are not generally expecting the full balance due, but everyone just wants to find a resolution. So settling these are great if for both parties. If that, I always push everyone, can you guys just resolve it?
Exactly. And I mean, look, I think we all can agree, whatever side that you're on, landlord or tenant, it's a terrible time for both sides. Um, who I don't know if they're right now it's supposedly December 31st, but I don't know if it's going to be extended. We don't really know. I guess we have to wait and see. But I mean, it's again, you have some tenants that haven't paid in 10 months, 11 months, and
Right.
there's no recourse for the landlord. So what I was saying before is a lot of these landlords now are deciding just to sell their property because the rental income that they would get was going directly to pay their mortgage. And I've seen a few landlords getting these letters from the bank saying, you're past due, which leads to foreclosure. And again,
Do you want to touch on foreclosures or is that a whole other thing?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, are the banks moving forward with foreclosures right now? And are they having hearings on it? Is it on hold?
it's slower, but it was slower obviously in the beginning of the coronavirus when it came out. And then a lot of the private loans, obviously, they can proceed. Those sales are going through.
Right.
If you have a Fannie Freddie loan, there's a federal back mortgage, they're moving slower, and you can get final judgments, but they're not being set for sale. So they're
Right.
kind of just sitting there. And the ones that already have, that had sale dates before the pandemic started are just sitting
Right.
there. So it's like everyone's kind of in limbo right now. You have landlords that are just frustrated and that could potentially go into foreclosure, and they're not getting any recourse from the bank itself. There's no forbearance. And I'm starting to see, Hilary, that people are being served with foreclosures on these loans. And
Right. That's right. That's scary because not only are we dealing with tenants who are suffering, they can't pay the rent, landlords can't pay the mortgage on their investment property, and this is what we don't want to see is this domino effect of now these properties then going to foreclosure and leading in that direction.
right.
The governor's order, which expired at the end, or I'm sorry, I think October 1st or 2nd, didn't apply to commercial evictions, but
Right.
I will tell you, Mayor Jimenez, I believe, in Miami has now halted, I don't know if you know this, has halted all writs on commercial evictions. So even those in Miami-Dade cannot go forward, which I believe that happened in September too. So that's newer news because a lot of residential evictions have always been more protected during COVID, commercial evictions not. And now Miami's taken sort of this lead to say, look, we're going to hold commercial evictions,
Correct.
which obviously has a lot more money at issue on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of stayed away from Miami a little bit because I don't really know what's going to become of that, that situation, but it's not looking, I mean, there's some cases right now that are just, again, that are sitting there. There's nothing that anyone can. And then, Miami's got the bulk of the population in South Florida. Not the bulk, but I would say close to 50%. And that's going to be interesting, I think, when the hold is lifted. I mean, you're going to have what they're saying is tsunami of evictions and a tsunami of foreclosures. I can't imagine what Miami's going to look like December 31st.
Yeah. Tell us about what your experience is like when you go. I know you've been in hearing a lot. What are your hearings like? I mean, how do you feel the judges are acting? What's the trends?
I mean, just like your files, we try to comply with every, statute. We try to comply with the right process. However, when I'm in court and I've had a few where, I've been very close to, let's say I'm representing the landlord and all my ducks are in a row, everything is good. And all of a sudden they'll even bring up CDC defense, even if they didn't file anything. They'll bring up the CDC defense, and the judges are very, very afraid of it. They don't
Yes.
want to, and I get it, but it's, it's holding us back. I will say this though, the amount of evictions that are being filed are astronomical.
Yes. That's why settlement
Yeah.
is a great option, because the court system is really backed up. In addition to that, we work with the e-portal, which means when we file lawsuits, Brian and I and attorneys, you can file them online. Everything's easy. But what's happening with my Miami cases is the clerks are partially shut down. So it's gone back to mailing. After I file it, we have to mail in the summons, then they mail it back out. Just to start a lawsuit can take an extra couple of weeks or more, in certain areas because the clerk is half closed. So
Right, and I think they're right at 30% right now, and things that we would file before Hilary would basically get filed within 30 minutes.
right.
Now it will take 5 days just to get anything.
So the expectation needs to be adjusted for all clients, because just the filing process of any type of lawsuit is just different.
Right. I called last week in Broward, and they were, because of the short staff, they were 4 days behind. And I mean, it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do.
Right. Nothing can
You
do.
have almost 2 million people in Broward County, and you have 20% staff. So yeah, evictions are taking longer. I would actually say, before Hilary, they were taking 4 to 6 weeks, maybe on average 4 to 5 weeks. Just depends how quickly the sheriff gets out there. But now I think you should account for at least 8 weeks.
Let me ask you a question. You were talking before that sometimes the landlords want to sell. Can they sell the property while there's a tenant there, or?
Absolutely. So, and there's nothing really the tenant can do about it at that point. Every landlord / owner has the right to sell the property. There's a letter called an estoppel letter, and basically it's what the new owner will have to give the landlord. I'm sorry, the new owner has to give to the tenant, basically outlining what rent did they pay to the prior landlord. Just going through the entire thing. It's kind of like a personal information sheet, and that has to be collected by the new owner. What a lot of landlords are doing now, and what I've seen, is they're trying to remove the tenant before they sell it, because a lot of these new owners or buyers won't take the property with a tenant in there because they want the property just empty.
But it can be hard to remove a tenant right now.
Yeah, it's bad. Hilary, one thing I've noticed, what's come a lot, and I've actually gotten a few of those, are unlawful detainers. Unlawful detainers is when, let's say you have a family member or ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend that's living in your property that you allowed to live there at one point, but now let's say you guys broke up or you want your family
I'm
member to
getting
leave.
a lot of those. Yes, where
it's
you're
insane.
trying to remove a guest from your home and they won't leave.
Right, and a lot of it, I'm sure, has to do with the stress that's going on right now. People are just very frustrated, and people that are staying in your house can't get a job because the economy, there's not a ton of jobs out there. So an unlawful detainer is, you don't have to give notice. You can just go ahead and file it. I mean, you're supposed to give notice if it's the right thing to do, but it's not required like a landlord tenant, because you have the 3-day notice or any type of 7-day notice.
Right.
But unlawful detainers are usually quicker.
Let me give a warning to anyone. If you are just a nice person and you want to invite someone to stay in your home and as a guest, for like sort of long term, maybe a couple months, the best thing you can do to protect yourself is not give them a key, because they really don't have possession. Once you hand possession to someone or they're getting mail there or anything else, you can't just change the locks on them. You have to go through a whole legal process. So
Right.
Maybe make them a tenant.
Right, exactly. And, the filing fees for unlawful detainers are obviously, I think they're like $120 more than what it would cost for a regular landlord tenant deal. But I'm telling you right now, for a lot of people, it's the best recourse for any type of situation. And with unlawful detainer, remember, a lot of people will come, I don't know, I'm sure it's the same with you. People say, I want to evict my friend. You're not evicting your friend. They're an occupant, not a tenant. Because when you evict, you have a contract, whether written or not written. It could be oral or it could be,
No, you brought up a good point. it's not necessarily a very aggressive action. You're just trying to get a piece of paper to say, look, you're not listening to me. So here's an official order, you have to go. And usually a lot of times when you file these, it gets resolved pretty soon after,
Right.
because you're taking it out of your hands. They don't really believe you. And then they believe you once they're
Right.
getting a court paper.
Right. And if I were, an occupant, I would, once you're served with it, I would take it very, very seriously, because although it doesn't show up as an eviction, it's still a removal action.
That's right.
And, you try to go somewhere else, it's going to be on your record. And that, unfortunately, is harder to get reversed in an eviction, because you go back and you can pay your landlord the money that's owed and say, all right, I'll go ahead and vacate it.
100%. And it's overseen by a sheriff. If you don't listen, a sheriff's going to come and remove you. So yeah, it has to be taken seriously. That's a really good piece of advice. Another thing sometimes people don't know is sometimes you don't have to go through the whole eviction process if the tenant, this is commercial and residential. If you look under Chapter 83 Florida statutes, if they've abandoned and you just follow the statute, abandoned so many days, you can sometimes just put up a notice and change the locks in accordance with once the notice expires. So you actually don't have to finish the eviction. I was telling this to someone the other day, and they said, oh my gosh, that's great. So there's other options to go around this if to get your property legally back so that you can sell it, re-rent it, whatever you need to do.
Right. I think also, you made a great point. And I think what a lot of landlords, have to understand or have to know, that they're not going as fast as they used to be. They're not going, they're not, they have to understand that they're going to lose money. If your tenant's not paying, there's nothing we can do about it. We obviously outlined some of the options before, but, getting a money judgment in the same case. But if they're not paying, there's a chance you're going to miss out another month, 2 months. There's nothing you can do about it. But at the end of the day, you will remove them and you will get a new tenant in there. And hopefully someone that can pay in time.
That's a really good point, because I think both Brian and I are probably, I'm going to give ourselves a compliment, but both our firms are really quick in the past with these evictions, and we move them as fast as we can. And for tenants, we defend them as best we can. But everyone needs to understand that there are items that are outside our control now. And the court system, the county system, and the sheriff, we can't change what's going on. And the federal government is now involved in South Florida cases. So, and the judges, the courts, everyone's taking it really seriously. So
I think it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. I know right now there's tons and tons of evictions, but this order is, preventing a lot of people, a lot of landlords from really removing their tenants. And after another 2.5 months, it could be a windfall order. It could be interesting.
Right. And just for anyone watching out there too, please, this is not legal advice in any way. Obviously, for your specific circumstances, you need to contact us or your own attorney to get like the law as it applies to you specifically. But we're trying to give you ideas on what to think about going forward. I know they're also trying to fight the CDC. There's litigation against it to try to dismantle this order, but I don't know. If for the tenants that are really suffering due to COVID, this is very helpful. For people who are not and trying to use it to take advantage of not paying rent, it's awful. So it's both sides. What else is going on out there in the world of law, Brian?
Well, I think obviously we spoke about landlord tenant. Foreclosures I think are going to be the next big thing. As going back to that, I think I read somewhere like 15 million people that didn't pay their, not 15 million, I'm sorry, 5 million people that didn't pay their mortgage. United States, and Florida has a major it's a major part of the population of the United States, and a lot of people have homes down here. A lot of people have investment properties. So I think what we're going to see next after the Hilary is going to be the foreclosures.
Yeah, that's what none of us want to see. So hopefully it won't go in that direction. On a lighter note, I know we're both handling the title and closings, which can sometimes be a happy event. Have you seen those going any slower, or are those just going normal for you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty with the lenders right now because things keep on changing. Finances keep on changing during the process itself. So what I've actually seen a lot more, at least with my title company, is refinances.
It's a great time to refinance.
100%.
If you're going to refinance anyone out there,
do not
make any major purchases during a refi, by the way, just throwing that
Right.
out there, or do construction on your home.
Absolutely, the rates are ridiculous right now.
The rates are good.
I mean, I don't think it'll ever be like this ever again. I mean, at least for not for a very, very, very long time. I mean, some of these people are getting, you know, in the low twos.
Yeah, it's a great time. So that's a happier note for people that want to refinance or, you know, purchase or sale. It's definitely a seller's market. We've had guests in the past saying the inventory out there is low. They put something up for sale, it's selling fast. That's what I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be a seller's market, but the interest rates are low, so that's good for buyers. So those are sort of happier cases.
Things will get better though. Things will improve. You know, yeah, I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen, you know, just a drop in the market going up or down. But you know, South Florida is like that anyways. We're always, you know, unlike the rest of the country. We're always doing, you know, with real estate down here, it's never just okay. It's always high. It's always low. There's no middle ground down here. So I mean, evictions are kind of just running the course of South Florida. But,
right, and it's testing all my knowledge. I've been doing evictions, I don't know, since I've moved here years and years ago. And this past few months has brought out everything I've ever worked on with the statutes, with the leases, with month-to-month tenancies, with verbal tenancies. I mean, it's bringing out all the law. So this has been, for a landlord-tenant attorney, this is like very challenging, but, you know, exciting.
One thing I can say real quickly, though, about landlords, though, I wouldn't, you know, if you're going to see the CDC order, they have to give it to you first. They don't give it to you, you can still go ahead and file. And the best advice I could tell you is just don't wait until December 31st. If you have an active case, at least open it up. At least make sure it's out there.
I agree 100%.
Even if they bring up the CDC when there's a final judgment or, you know, whatever, you'll be in line before everybody else, as opposed to waiting, you know, oh, I'm going to do January 1st or January 2nd.
I agree 100%. When this first happened back in March and we had the first governor's order sometime after that, I said, maybe hold on the filing. It was unsure. Now, I totally believe if you have a landlord-tenant issue, at least get your filing in now. Start moving forward, because with the entire state going to move forward, you don't want to be at the back of the line, because then it'll just be a delay for procedure reasons, not because you were being nice to hold. You want to definitely get it out there so that you don't get crushed.
Even if the judge can't move it forward, he'll, you know, he or she will send set a status conference, which kind of put pressure on both parties and say, look, you know, nobody wants to go in front of a judge. So it's, you know, especially if you're a tenant, you don't want to be in a situation, you don't want to be kind of exposed like that. And, you know, I think when they see a judge, they know that their landlord is not messing around. And I think it's kind of, it will push the case, or at least push them to settle. And ultimately, like you said before, which I agree 100%, is settling is the best possible thing.
Right. I can't believe it's been 30 minutes. I always say that already. It's crazy. Look, obviously a lot of people watch this throughout the week. It runs all week or for a while. So you might have questions. That's why Brian and I are here. You can feel free to ask us. We want to help the community. We want to be here. We're sharing our time. I'm at zalmanlawfirm.com. Brian, how do people reach you?
It's just the law office of Brian P. Kowal. At Brian, well, you can go to my website as well, briankowallaw.com.
Feel free to reach out. We're here to help you. I'll be happy to talk to you. And just if you have questions, it's a lot of material to go through online. It's a lot of material. I don't charge for questions. We want to help the community. So the Boca Raton Tribune, they call this show Boca's Briefcase, because they want the guests to take something out of your briefcase to leave people with as you end this show. So if you could leave viewers watching, I mean, you have everyone from lawyers to owners to realtors. What would you leave people with, or tenants, to walk away with?
Again, like, that's what we just said before. I don't think it's wise right now to just wait. You got to enforce your legal rights right away. You don't want to wait to the last minute. Because like anything else, people that do wait to the last minute, you're going to get a bad result. And I think right now, because of the times, because what everyone's dealing with right now, if you're going to go speak to an attorney, see what your options are, and really try to see if they can come to some type of agreement and avoid this altogether, because it has long-term effects that you don't want to deal with down the line.
I fully agree. I fully agree. Do not wait. There's protections for both owners and for tenants. This is the time to talk to an attorney. Don't wait till everything supposedly goes back to normal. Deal with it now. Don't put your head in the sand, whatever side you're on, and move it forward. Even the courts are going to help this get resolved. They're pushing to get these resolved. So this is the time to do it. And everyone's trying to work together. So hopefully, whatever you're dealing with, it will work out. We will continue to watch the law and keep you advised. Brian Kowal, thank you so much for sharing.
Hilary, thank you so much. That was great. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And again, anyone have questions, let us know. Next week will be a more fun non-law conversation about being an author and a writer, and a famous author and writer, Ellen Hildebrand. I can't hold up all her books because I'm not an octopus, but she's awesome writing about the tropics. So, and then coming up after that, we're going to have some teachers on the show to talk about their experience with homeschooling and being in school. So I'm very excited to have some teachers on for that. So press subscribe at the Boca Raton Tribune. Follow us, and it'll send you a reminder when we have our show Wednesdays at 2:00. And see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Brian.